for dropping by. Here in the UK we talk about the weather a lot. It's because it's infinitely changeable and never seems to sit still for any length of time. No complaints about our weather at the moment. It's wet and miserable. That's what it does this time of year. One thing I wanted to say is that with the demise of the ability to get orchids into this country now, the orchids that the country currently possesses, that's in private collections, nurseries, dotted around people's windowsills, are going to become a bit precious because they might not be able to be replaced, or certainly nowhere near as easily. And my fantasy about getting stuff in through the Republic of Ireland and up through Northern Ireland and across to England, that bit of sea, it ain't going to happen. Basically all that's happened is the basic border, that the imaginary border I suppose you could call it, that was between the Irish Republic and Northern Ireland has just been moved out into the Irish Sea basically. So CITES would still apply with plants coming from Northern Ireland to England, simply because for rules purposes Northern Ireland is still being treated in part as part of the EU. So the border's just moved basically, so that ain't going to work. That was a nice idea, wasn't it? But it's not going to work. I would imagine in time that people are going to start looking at this, because the thing that gets me is that orchids come into the category of plants to be planted. In other words, they're living plants, not like cut flowers. Yeah, subtle difference. But if you look at how many garden centres there are in the UK, and we're coming up to the time of year when everybody's going to be rushing out to the garden centres to buy their bedding plants for the summer colour, yeah? Where do we think most of those come from then? Do we think they're homegrown, or do they come across, yeah? So I think somewhere down the line somebody's going to have a think about how we apply this. Now obviously bedding plants are not subject to CITES, but they will still be subject to inspections for health reasons, you know, bugs, all that sort of stuff. So they would probably still need a photosanitary certificate, and you still need to have the import and export licenses in place and all that sort of stuff. So maybe the subject will get visited, and perhaps the orchids coming from established nurseries in the EU across to the UK can have some sort of exemptions or something, I don't know. But as it stands at the moment, what we've got here is precious. So I'd like to point you in the direction of Mix Mazdavalias on his channel. And in a recent video he's pointed people to his own website that he's created, which I must admit I had a look round, that's pretty good. I mean, most websites are not physically created, i.e. programmed by the person. They're actually, you use software to generate it. But you still have to do some design and all that sort of stuff. I thought it was quite a nice website. Handled easily. Find your way round and get lost, buried down the pages thinking, where am I now? So that's good. But he's allowing people to offer, UK people, to effectively use his website to buy and sell. Yeah, so it's like a central point where people can put their plants up for sale. People can probably make offers, or do that sort of thing, and it's a good idea. There is no doubt about it. It's a good idea because, like I say, if you repot a plant and split it into three, you've got two pieces that others might want that now can't get, if you see what I mean. So your divisions, keys, things like that are going to become precious. So all those bits that I chuck in the bin when I'm repotting, I might have to stop doing that. But I'm still not one for dealing with struggling plants for any length of time, and that's really what I want to talk about today. Part of my Sunday chat, it's coming up to that time of year when there's a rationalization takes place here, where I have a look round and think, you don't earn your keep, you're going. Now in the past, those would have been offered to other people. And a lot of those other people would have been in the EU. That now can't happen. And I mean, I may put some of mine up on Mick's website, I don't know. But most of the stuff I want to get rid of is because it's no good. And there's no way I would pass that on to somebody else, if you see what I mean. So the rationalisation at the moment is we're about a 10.5 hour day length at the moment. By the end of the month, we'll be nearly up to that magic 11 hours. So I'm going to, in my notes, I will itemise, mark in red, yeah. Red is danger, you're in danger of not being here much longer, which is what it basically comes down to. And any plant that I don't like the look of, that isn't performing very well, doesn't look like it's going to recover, gets 1 month. And the importance of allowing that month is that it gets past that 11-hour point where those day lengths trigger some growth activity. Well, that's your chance, mate. That is your chance. Up to the end of March, that's as long as you've got. And the other decision is no more cool growers under any circumstances. No more coming in, because that's where most of my plants struggle. Yeah. So no more Masdevallias, no more Restrepias, but not because they don't do well, because I've got a selection. I don't want dozens and dozens of Restrepias. If I did, I'd go and buy up Burnhams. They've probably got more Restrepias than anyone else. But I've got a selection that I like, so we keep them. But no more Masdevallias, no more Draculas, none of those. And no more Miltoniopsis, yeah? So that's where we are. I've also got some Oncidium types that have gone downhill and don't look like they want to recover. So they come into this 1 month category. Either you start to grow or you go. And they're in a state that I wouldn't want to pass on to somebody else. There was a, what was it? I think it was a Twinkle actually that just went downhill suddenly. And I repotted it, took off all the rotten bits and everything like that. And I think I ended up with three bits that went on mounts. They're not doing very well. They're badly desiccated and shriveled and they won't grow. So again, they come into that category. You've got till the end of March to show new growths and hopefully some root activity, otherwise out you go. So that's my rationalisation this year, not necessarily passing anything on to anybody else. I mean, there's 2 Miltonias up here, got split and put onto 2 mounts. I don't need them both, and at the moment I think they are. You could say they are coming into growth, so they're not on the danger list. Yeah, I mean, if you look at this one, where's my camera? It's got a new growth coming out here and a new growth on the other side. So this latest growth here has 2 new ones coming out, one each side. That is typical of this one's growth pattern. So this piece is going to be fine. Yeah, it's got 2 old bulbs with leaves that are not going to last too much longer. The latest growth matured and bloomed, I think, probably. Yes, and bloomed. Now it's got 2 new ones. And those 2 new ones are starting some roots. So it's not saved by the bell, that's doing as expected. What I don't like is this. You won't see that very well because it'll be in shadow. This is the live sphagnum. It doesn't work. It's not going to grow because it hasn't got access to anywhere near enough water. Now up this end of the mount is the other type of moss, forest moss, moss that's come off of fallen trees and things like that. Yeah, now that's growing. So I need to go out and get some because I haven't got any, I'll run out. The live moss we used last time was off the floor. There's still some down there. And I just scraped it up and just, yeah, that'll work. Now the other piece of that Miltonia, as you can see, that has got live moss on it. It looks better and it's okay. Now what's this one up to? This one pushed up this growth that's incredibly weak, very, very weak growth there. But look at the roots that are coming out from it. Yeah? And on the other side of the plant is a new growth. So, see how we look and we don't see? How often have I said, you look and you don't see? What about that then? I'd missed that new growth completely. So we have one here. What we also have on here is a very nasty brown patch at the base of this leaf. Now, talking about looking and not seeing, we have to ask, why has that happened? That is highly likely to have liquid inside of here that can't get out. So I'm just going to get my scissors and we'll see. We'll see what's in there. Because I want the leaf off anyway. You won't be able to see me do this because I need two hands. One to get the leaf out of the way and the other one to hold the scissors. So I need to get the scissors down in the gap between the leaf and the pseudobulb and then snip and see what we get. I don't think it's as bad as it could have been. I think it's probably something that has happened and has sorted itself out on its own. But that's the leaf. You can see that is a type of rot, yes, but it's not soaking wet. Yeah? And more importantly, in behind it, the bulb is okay. So it hasn't got into the bulb. That's the important bit. Right, so this one also has 2 new growths. Strictly speaking, it's got 3 because it produced this weak one first. And good root activity coming out at about the time that this Miltonia, and a lot of Miltonias do. They tend to get their growths about halfway to full size, then they have a flush of roots. So, you know, a good time to repot those is not just as you see the new growths, but more likely as the growths get to that sort of size, because the new roots are not too far behind. So if you lose some of your existing root system, it's not too bad. But again, I've got 2 of those. I don't need 2. And though that has lovely blooms, I'll do a pop-up of the blooms and what it's called, because I've completely, that's gone out of my head. I'm pretty sure it's a primary cross, but anyway, that's what pop-ups are for, so that I don't have to rack my brains in the middle of chatting. An example, something like that. That's not growing. That is badly shriveled. The only good thing about it is it's still got a lot of green leaves on it, so it's not dying, but it's far from growing. So that needs to show some new growths from the base in the not too distant future. Otherwise it's on its bike. Can't even remember what it is. That might be one of those pieces of the twinkle that got split up. I don't know. We shall see. So that's, and again, that's that live sphagnum moss. It's not doing well. And on the day that I water it, it's green. The next day, it's a sort of silvery grey colour. It's not a happy thing to be on a mount. It's not working. So I need to slowly but surely get that off and replace it with some forest moss more suited to mounted orchids. But that does mean going out and getting some. I was thinking actually, my hole in the arm is now 2.5 weeks old. So I'm coming up to the point where the immunity that vaccine's providing is active in me, which makes me feel a little safer when I have to go in the flipping supermarket to replenish the milk stocks, which I have to do. The trouble is, the size of the milk that I buy is it's 4 pints, whatever that is, 2 point something or other litres. And that's the size that I use just before the date. Yeah, so I use it all, nothing gets chucked out because I hate wasting food, and it's a few days before the end date, before the use by date, so it works well. Yeah, that's my coffees sorted. And the trouble is, if I get 2, one of them, or at least some of it's going to go past the end date, so that's no good. So it's just one of those things that I do have to go and get fresh every now and again. But I now feel better about going in that place on the grounds that I've not only got my mask on, and I'll sort my hands out when I come out before I get back in the car, and all that sort of stuff. I still do all that. I'll still probably be doing that in a year's time. So that doesn't end. The only time that ends is when I can guarantee that nobody's been in that little supermarket that's infected. How the hell can you ever guarantee that? So the mask and the hands is probably going to stay for some considerable time. But yeah, I just feel a bit better about that now, because if there has been somebody in there that's badly infected that hasn't become badly ill yet and still thinks it's okay to do their shopping, they're probably not going to get me. But that sounds very selfish, and in some ways it is, but I can't look after everybody else, can I? All I can do is try and make sure that I don't get it, and therefore don't give it to anybody else. So anyway, so that's my rationalisation this year. How well are you doing? If you're in the not very well category, you're not doing so good, that's okay. If you're doing lousy, that's not so good. You're on your way out, and that's going to be my rationalisation. And then the other thing I've got is I've still got some dendrobiums that don't belong to me, one of which is taking up half a shelf. It's so big, it's in a bucket. Yeah, that's got to go. Plus a couple of the ones that I've actually got that are Jeff's, that just missed the run, basically. And some of mine are going to go into that national collection, providing Marius is okay with taking some extra numbers. And the trouble is, because nobody's meeting, nobody really knows what's going on about things like that. So we shall see. Now, I did my talk to the Ohio Orchid Society. They seem pleased with that. That's good stuff. Virtually the same talk, not exactly the same, but virtually the same talk is going out this coming Friday to one of my orchid societies. And that's that talk done as far as I know. But it's still available as a Zoom presentation for people who think they might like that sort of thing. And obviously, although it's a video presentation, it is accompanied by me. I am there as well, because we had quite a nice questions and answers session at the end of the video. So yeah, it's available. And I made arrangements with them to actually have that video is private, so it can't be seen. The only people who can see it are people that I give the link to, and I did make arrangements that becomes their video, it's their property, so they're going to load that on their website, I believe, providing the link works, of course. There's no reason why it shouldn't, but that video, although it's on YouTube, it can't be seen. It's actually private, so that's the way I did that. Yeah, so looking around here, I could sort of say on that shelf there we have 3 Restrepias, they're fine. We've got my 2 little species Paphiopedilums. They can stay until they die. They don't seem to be growing much, but they're not in the way and they're not doing any harm. There's another Paphiopedilum Mordier that is going downhill, so I do like the bloom, but 1 bloom a year on 1 new fan a year is not my idea of a strapping plant, quite honestly. There's also my struggling Renanthera there that had the rotten stem that was cut off. That's okay. Its latest leaf is extending, so it is growing and it's still got the 1 root that it was left with. Down there we've got my larger Restrepias. There's a Masdevallia that's growing on really nice with bright green leaves. See, now if my Masdevallias all look like that, then they could stay. I mean, that's just a hybrid, no ID, has lovely blooms, but that's, but they're not all like that. Not all like that at all. But that's the sort of condition I'd be happy with. And then, I mean, the dendrobiums, how many of those are struggling? Can't think of any. I guess I can actually. There's one up here. This has been struggling for 2.5, maybe even 3 years. And this is Harveyanum. And it sat there, it got scale real bad. And obviously this one is affected badly by the toxins from the scale because it collapsed, the whole plant just collapsed. And it's been sat there with these 3 little growths for years. And it's done nothing. Came out of a pot, went onto a mount, and now it's grown this little new growth that is very weak and feeble, but it did push out a couple of new roots down into that moss. And that's its state of play. The trouble is, the chances of me ever getting another one now are practically 0 unless I can find somebody that's got one that's going to divide it. Yeah, because I can't get that one. I can't get that from the EU, which is where it came from. So I'm stuck with this piece trying to get it to recover. It is showing signs of recovery, but that's a hell of a long way from the plant it once was. So there is a struggling dendrobium. That's it. That's the one. So that just gets left to hopefully do its own thing. I don't think there's any other dendrobiums that are struggling. Oh yes, there's another one. Let's have a go at this. But this one's come off the list. This is my glomeratum that failed. It bloomed and then promptly keeled over. I got a feeling that certainly some of the dendrobiums, possibly cattleyas as well, they bloom as a last resort, and it takes the last bit of life out of the plant. There's not enough left to go. But this one's underway. This has not grown a new cane for 2 years or more, probably 2.5 years. Now look, 3 nice new canes coming and some roots starting. So this comes off the danger list now. All those canes have got to do is grow this year into something reasonable, and it's back on track. But boy has that struggled. It's got a lousy root system that looks half dead, but it's now growing some new ones, so it's coming back. So you've saved yourself before I even need to put you on the danger list. What else have we got? We've got that little cattleya on the mount that was another scale suffering badly, wasn't it? I forgot which one it is. Yeah. Oh, it's actually over here. I was going to say, it should be up there and it's not. It's down here because it bloomed. Yeah, this one, this is on the danger list simply because I'm not sure it's recovered yet. But it lost 2 growths completely. They rotted. And they had to be cut quickly because it was wet rot and cinnamon applied. And I thought that was the end of it, but it's managed to push a new growth out the back that has managed to bloom. But those blooms are not... I mean, this bloom here, it's just the petals. I was going to say it's just deformed. It's not actually. It's a petal and a sepal is actually stuck together, so it's not as deformed as I thought. But not a full-size strong growth like this one once was, but it's sort of okay. Now these blooms last absolutely ages. I'm going to take the spike off soon because I need the plant to do its thing and push up another new growth. And that's the little lemon drops crossed with Encyclia vitellina. Where did I see that this morning? Somebody's video on YouTube perhaps had a Encyclia vitellina. Gorgeous orange blooms, really nice. And that's obviously where this one gets its orange tone from. So that one's struggling. In amongst my larger cattleyas, I've got several struggling, some badly struggling. We did see some of those last week when we were picking up plants and looking at them. Found one with the soggy black rot on it. So in amongst my cattleyas are some not doing that well. And they take up space, so, again, I think I've got 3 cattleyas that are orange. Fundamentally, they're orange. Do I need all 3? So if any of those are really badly struggling and appear to be going downhill, they're now on borrowed time. Yeah? So we shall see. Right, where do we get to? Coming around here. Up here is a bit of a mixture. There's quite a few of my Latorias on this shelf. Now the Latorias I've currently got aren't doing bad, except for the one that's been sat here in bloom for some time, the Alexandriae. That hasn't pushed up a new growth for some time. But it's finished blooming. We're coming into its growing season, and the longer days, now's its chance to shine again. A couple of Nobiles up in there. There's a Brassia up in there. That's doing okay. 2 big strong new growths. That'll be fine. What else have we got? We've got one that's come off the danger list. This plant, it's a Nobile type, struggled for years. And last year it pushed up that new growth. Well, you've made it, haven't you? This is its previous efforts down here. And now it's done that. Nice big fat, healthy new growth. That hasn't bloomed for a very long time. That's Lovely Virgin Angel. Again, the only reason that stayed here for this length of time was I like the blooms and I'd like to see them again. And it's probably one that I could never get again now. It would have come from one of the EU nurseries, no doubt. I can't for the life of me remember where I got that. The trouble is with my notes, you see, I used to keep those sorts of details. All of the plants that I'd had since I started with my spreadsheet had the date I acquired them and who I got them from, you know, where they came from, their origin. So I knew how long I had them and where they came from. And when I lost my spreadsheet, so I'm just pausing so that everybody can run off and check their alarms and check their oven and check all this, that and the other. And then come back and realise it's mine again. Yep, we're making bread. It seems to come round each Sunday. It's just the length of time it takes for me to get through my loaf, I suppose. When I get to the last slice on a day, the next day I make a new loaf. I don't make it on the day I run out, because then it's a day older than it needs to be. And homemade bread doesn't last anywhere near as well as shop bought. That's because it hasn't got all the rubbish in it and preservatives, has it? Oh, I like that. Right, that's that shelf done. Over here, this is Sotoanums. There's a Cattleya in there. There's my, oh God, one of the project orchids that's like a zygo. I can never remember. Pabstia or something, that's in there. A couple of Oncidium types, including a species. Then down there's my hibiki and another, that's a Miltonia, I think. And then there's that thing that begins with W that's pronounced V that came from Zangler on the ground floor there. Two Odontoglossums, my Crispum and my Golden Rialto. I'll get there in a minute. They're down on the ground floor there. They're not doing well at all, but I don't want to lose them. So they've got to die before they go. Cymbidium's on the floor, that's had its spike taken off now. Over here we've got the big Brassias and the big Oncidium types, and round by the glass are some Cattleya types, none of which had the scale treatment. So all of those Cattleyas on that shelf are doing fine, thank you very much. And then down here we've got more giant Oncidium types, and up the back there are those Sarcochilus. They're not doing so well as they should be. And some more Miltonias, some more Oncidiums. My big Coelogene cristatas on the floor there, along with a couple of cooler growing Oncidiums there. These are the larger Cattleyas up here, and some of these are on the danger list, not because they weren't healthy or anything, they just didn't take to that bleach treatment. So that was me. That's not the plant's fault. Yeah. Down here we've got some larger dendrobiums. That's where my some of my black hair types are, like Formosum, Infundibulum, and things like that. The recovering Make. Are you going to make it? This is just sitting on some damp moss, awaiting root and growth. It's doing neither. It's just sitting on damp moss. It's not in it. It's just sitting on it. Because if I put it in it, one leaf's just come off. Actually, there's another one that needs to come off as well. No point in leaving yellowing leaves on. So that's 2 leaves dropped on that one. That's on the danger list. It needs to respond and put up some roots down and some growths up. If it can start some new growths, it will get some roots. It's that type of plant. So that's on the danger list. It's not long for this world. And I'm in the middle of watering my Vandas at the moment, so we don't get to look at those very often, do we? So I can't hang it back up yet because it's still dripping. But this is the one with the really large bluish purple flowers that missed a year. This used to live in a huge big wooden basket, and it was getting unwieldy and clumsy, and there were lots of dying and dead roots in the middle of that basket, plus it was heavy. So the basket got cut off, which took the bottom of the plant off, leaving more than enough roots for the plant, more than enough. It's a perfectly adequate root system, but the shock seemed to it just seemed to decide it was going to miss a year out and not bloom. However, during the previous growing season and on through the winter, it has put on quite a lot of leaves without blooming. So I suspect when it does bloom, shouldn't be too long, better weather and longer days will trigger that. That is probably going to have a very good spike on it this time round. Now, looking without seeing, my orange Vanda that Hannah got for me went downhill badly and lost loads of its basal leaves. I thought I was going to lose the whole plant. But it decided to grow a kiki, which is sort of slowly pushing on. The idea being that eventually it will cover up the bald patch. But look closer. Talk about looking without seeing. Look at the leaves. They're covered in spots. Now a few spots on leaves is not a big deal. Now look closer. Looking without seeing again. These are not spots, they're pits. The leaves are pitted, and that is the latest leaf. Sorry. That's the latest leaf. So what's going on with this? So because of the spots, not that long ago, this had a fungicide spray, thinking that's what the spots were all about. And this morning I thought, it doesn't seem to be getting any better. These marks on this latest leaf I'm sure have got worse, and they shouldn't have done. So I got my magnifying glass out. There's little tiny bugs on it. I'm not sure what they are. They're not red spider mite because they were white. They looked like absolute miniature mealybugs. But then there would be some adults around if it was mealybugs. It's not that. It's not scale, so I don't know what it is, but it looks to be like a type of mite, and it's only on that plant. That plant touches the other Vanda that we've just had a look at with its lovely clean leaves. So it's just on here. So that, which I shouldn't really be holding and then drinking my coffee, that's had a spray with an insecticide today, because I looked at it closer and properly. But the damage is not going to recover because these black marks are actually pitted. The leaves have gone right in. Really badly pitted. Now I don't think the plant's going to die or anything, you know, it's hydrated, it's growing, and soon it'll be pushing out new roots. They tend to stop growing in the winter because of the cold, lower temperatures, and then they all shoot out again come the longer days and the better temperatures. But again, looking without seeing, I just assumed, oh, it'll be a fungus, we'll stop that, same as you get on the oncidiums, and zygos get it, the spotting on the leaves. Right, where do we get to? We've done that lot, haven't we? It's larger cattleyas, dendrobium, blah 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 blah. Some more cattleyas up there, one of which is loop. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 yellow leaves on one plant over there. That don't leave many green ones, so there's one struggling over there. And that's the one that's just opened its blooms. That's the Shinfong Young Min, some or other golden boy, the one with the really long names. The plant's far from happy. Well, I think we've looked at that recently. There's my giant bulbophyllum, the Elizabeth Ann Buckleberry. And I don't want this, and somebody's already said, I'll have it. And they can have it when we can move again, when I can get in the car. This really is down to the next time I can visit Burnham's, because I will then have to drive past the area where this person lives and can collect it. But this currently is coming into growth. 1, 2, you won't be able to see them because they're buried. 3, 4, 5, 6. It's about 7 new growths coming up on this. Now this seems to bloom on the bulb behind where the new growth is, if you see what I mean. So as the new growth pushes on and starts to mature, it blooms from the one behind it. But it's a good plant. I mean, in the not too distant future, it'll probably have to be repotted. It's been in there quite a while, but it seems happy in there. That's the Elizabeth Ann Buckleberry, if I didn't say before. But that I didn't say before, I have now. God, that's heavy as well. Very mucky. The algae on the clay pot. And then coming down there, we have another couple of larger oncidiums. There's a Miltonia, that's the Reginellii, couple that came from Jeff. There's another black-haired dendrobium, plus there's my Farmeri cross with Griffithianum. Everything's okay there. Up here we've got our 2 Miltonias that we're doing the feeding project on. The zygo's tucked in over there. And we had a look at that in the last video. Then we've got this thing in colour here. Oh, you can't see it. I've got the camera in a slightly different angle. This one's up here because I tend to put things in bloom. That's a nobly type. There's nothing wrong with that. That's there is actually. Here's a test for you. What is wrong with this plant? I'll twist it round so that you can sort of see. But there's something distinctly wrong with this. And it's to do with the growth. Certainly not the blooming. The blooming's okay. I'm happy with that. But what's really wrong with this is that you, by looking at it, if you know the way noblies grow, you would see that there's two old canes on here that are losing their leaves. So that's the oldest part of the plant. And I got a feeling it might push out a bloom or two down the bottom of those canes. But then it's got two canes that are obviously in bloom. They're not the tallest canes. Well, why are there taller canes then that haven't got blooms on? And the reason is it's out of season. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So the two canes that grew through last season started at the wrong time of year. So they matured at the wrong time of year. They haven't bloomed yet. Now those may bloom later in the spring, and they may wait till this time next year, like these did, because these started to grow at the wrong time of year. No sign of new growth at the base yet. But it doesn't matter. I'm not waiting for new growth on this. I'm just happy to enjoy the blooms while I've got them. So, and then as far as mounts are concerned, all my Tolumnias around here. I've got two that are struggling. The rest aren't too bad. What else did I notice this morning? No, not this morning. Yesterday when I watered the mounts. Some nubbins on this one, and that is Comet King. That struggled for a long time, came as a kiki from Rachel in the same box as the holy clay pots that came from Rachel. So that stayed like that with those two canes for some time. It eventually managed to push up this one, which I thought, oh, that's getting better, but nowhere near as big as it should be, and believe it or not, nor is this cane. The Dendrobium Comet King is a large plant. It should be on a par with that one I've just shown you with the blooms on. But the cane that grew last year, that is the biggest cane, is not the one that's blooming. It's the one from the previous year, and it's got two nubbins on it. And it will be allowed to bloom. I haven't seen those blooms for a long, long time. That are good to get those. Oh. And that lives with its leaves virtually touching the roof. They're as close to the roof as I can get them without actually touching and burning. Now this is Tortilli. This came from Alberto. I was hoping it was going to be big enough to bloom, and it still might be, because the two canes that grew last year are very fat and of a reasonable size, but this one's coming into growth. So both of those canes have a new shoot starting at the base prior to blooming. Now, I'm pretty sure that Tortilli actually blooms a bit later in the year, in which case last year's nice strong canes there could bloom, and that will be its first blooming if it does. That also lives up in the roof, practically touching it. So that's that lot. Up here we've got my little bulbophyllum. That's doing nicely. That's got 7 new growths on it, some of which are maturing. Some mature leaf there, and some are pushing their leaf on, so they're still growing. And each one of those new growths is producing new roots. So it's doing okay, and it seems to like being on the mount. We will get some blooms on that later in the year, perhaps. So that's that. My Orangus live up there. They're sort of doing okay. We've got this funny one that has the orange blob in the middle of the blooms, which is why I got it. Now this is a group of plants, and they're all growing new leaves. They're all in growth. It hasn't produced any new roots recently, but it's growing. The plants, individual plants, are growing along nicely. What else up here? Orangus. We've got the fastuosa, very phalaenopsis looking plant. Yeah, similar sort of leaves and shape. Now this one has very fine roots. They're okay. It's got a root system. It's now growing another new leaf. It's already grown once since I got it. It's now starting another one. Hasn't bloomed yet though. I'm not sure that's yet quite big enough yet, but it's coming on. If it's not going to bloom this year, it will next year. And then the other one we've got is the Mr. Sidii, which was 2 plants when I got it, and so they got mounted separately effectively. This is the larger of the two, and I doubt if that's big enough to bloom yet. That's going to be next year, I suspect. But it has grown a new leaf, that's good, and it has got some working roots. This root did actually extend a while back, so it has done a bit of root growth. And the other part of that plant is a much sort of younger piece, basically. But yet again, that's grown a new leaf, or is growing a new leaf. So that's in growth currently. All of those are going to do better when the longer days come and the better temperatures arrive. Down in here, I was just going to say, where did that come from? That was the this huge nobly type that keeps trying to fall over, so it has to be propped up. It has to be propped in a certain place so it doesn't actually fall over. Coffee's cold, that probably means I've been talking far too long. What does that say? Oh, I can never find it. 41 minutes, that's nearly time to stop. In here are all my Miltoniopsis. And going through some of these, this is the recent one from Burnham's. So this is the Rosellii, Xanthina crossed back with Rosellii. That's not looking happy. This growth here doesn't seem happy. It seems as though that's rotting. I don't know what's in the pot, and I think this is getting to the point where I need to find out what's in the pot. So the trouble is, it's difficult to judge whether it needs water or not. And that one can tolerate warmer temperatures than some of the Miltoniopsis. And then we've got the little other species. This is a Phalaenopsis. This has grown several new growths and is currently growing some more. I wouldn't say it was happy. It's been repotted now, so I don't have to worry about what's in the pot. Didn't have a very good root system though, but it's coming into active growth. That's that one. And then this tiny little piece here was only stuck in a pot because it's a yellow one. And they're like hen's teeth trying to get yellow Miltoniopsis. And I thought, that's a yellow Miltoniopsis. Somebody will want that one day. So that's why that got put in a pot. Then the bigger ones, I am going to get them all out, so bear with me. You don't look at these often. This is just a hybrid. So this is just a no ID. And this one is, the plant looks okay. It's not, because it hasn't got a good root system, but it looks okay, and it has got new growths coming. We've got one here, and one here that's got a couple of concertina leaves. And we know why that happens on Miltoniopsis, don't we? Because it doesn't get consistent watering. And that would have happened before it got repotted, when I was worried about rotting the roots. Now it's in the coconut husk, I probably don't need to worry so much. That's that one. And then we've got the other species that I'm hoping one day to get a seed pod on, but this pot is far too big. It's difficult to know whether this is happy or not. This is the Vexillaria. But the latest growth is coming up in the middle of the plant. It hasn't yet produced any roots, and it's pushing on. Oh, it's just starting the roots, so good. But again, a couple of crinkled leaves, and in a pot like that, that's what it was in when I got it. The bark isn't old, it's in tiny seedling size bark, this tiny little stuff, and that's probably Burnham's bark as well, so it'll be reasonable quality. So I don't need to repot it because of what it's in, apart from this. This is a pretty large pot for a plant that size. But at the moment I'd rather not disturb it. So growing, and then all these others are bits and pieces that came from our 60th anniversary show, and none of which are doing very well at all, but they're not dead yet. No roots. Now this is Noirmont, so that's the one that's almost black, the really deep coloured one. Not doing very well. This one, this has got a new growth on it, and it is producing some roots. Not very many, but a couple. And that's Noirmont as well, so that's the two pieces of that one. And then over here, we've got a nice yellowing leaf here on the oldest part. We need you off. Oh, you'll come off on your own. This is more Gant. And again, new growths maturing. No pot full of roots yet, but that plant doesn't look too bad. I've seen a lot worse. The new growth around this side that's leaning does have some new root activity underneath it. Now this is D apostrophe, this is French stuff. It's d'Auvergne, spelled A-U-V-E-R-G-N-E. So somebody threw some letters up and made a word up when they landed. But this is the yellow one. Now those are the pieces that were left. I thought we'll chuck them in a pot and see if they produce any new growths. Well, they haven't done yet. That's that one. This was a piece with a new growth on it already, and that new growth has pushed on a bit. Still don't see a plethora of roots coming out the base though. So that's the same one, yeah, so another yellow one. And then the final one over here, it will also be the same. So there were three, and so I'm picking out the tiny twinkle blooms that are the mount is directly above this lot. All the blooms keep falling in the pots. Right, so again this one has produced a new growth that's sort of okay. So these are all alive, but they're not doing well. Now they're not going to get thrown out, they're going to get left to see if they will pull on. And the time they are likely to do that is March and April. Why? Because they get their day lengths back, they get the temperatures a bit better, but not steamy hot yet. Yeah, because once you get out into those sort of temperatures over long days, they will struggle. So they need to get established before then, if they possibly can. Right, so they get to stay, all of those get to stay, unless they go downhill and die, in which case that's their end. But yeah, no more. That's the main decision, is no more plants that don't do well and struggle. If I haven't got them, I don't have to worry about them. I don't have to have rescues all over the place. Just have stuff that does well. And the cooler ones, the cooler grown ones, are the ones that seem to suffer the most. So without chucking them all out, we just don't get any more. And over a period of time, they will either perk up and start to do reasonable, or they'll go downhill and get chucked out, and they won't get replaced. So that's the theory there. And that'll do for today. It's a bit of a mixture. And don't forget about Mix Masdevalliers, and if you go to his, I think it was his last video or a recent video, he has a talk about his website and the fact that he doesn't mind people using it for buying and selling. He's got a link to the website on his in his video description, so you can go and look that up. Only other thing that's going on, I've been contacted to take part in one of these care collaboration things. With one of my worst dendrobiums, but apparently it's all about how you look after them in your environment and comparing it with others. That's the idea with that sort of thing. So I said I'd join in. So that's sometime out in March sometimes. A long way away. I'll probably forget. I'll need a reminder. But it's nice to be asked anyway. And I'll see you next time. Look after yourselves, stay safe and all that. And if anybody's actually made it this far, see, I do it at this end of the video. I don't like to impose on people at the beginning. But if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, it would not be nice if you do so. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps the channel along. And click the like or dislike button if that's the way you feel. And leave a comment if you feel so inclined. But I don't do that on every. Some people do that religiously on every single video. I find it tedious, so I don't. But every now and again I do. It's a matter of when I remember. But I don't include it in like my start or my end like some people do, so that you get the same spiel every single time. I don't do that. Those that do, I've got no problem with. Chances are I'm going to skip over it and not listen to it, but you know, once I've heard it, once you've heard it once, you don't need to hear it every time, do you? Or I don't anyway. See you next time. Enjoy yourselves, enjoy your orchids, and just think along the lines that one day all this nonsense is going to be over. And I'm seeing some light in the UK, I reckon midsummer, July into August, where we can start doing things as either small groups or larger groups outside in the open and things like that. Maybe. Look forward to something a bit better than we've had for the last year anyway. And see you next time. Bye for now. Oh, I forgot. I heard a joke. I know I went through a phase of doing a joke on the end of every video, but I ran out. But this one just came up. Some video I was watching, something or other, and it tickled me. Sometimes a little simple thing just makes me chuckle, and this did exactly that. What's the difference between roast beef and pea soup? Any idiot can roast beef.